In 1972, a small circle of European aristocrats, industrialists and scientists published a slender book with a modest title and an immodest ambition: to convince the entire planet that growth itself was the enemy, and that the only responsible future was one of engineered scarcity. They called themselves the Club of Rome. You were supposed to call them visionaries. History has been considerably less polite. Welcome to the Stateless Standard, where we read the fine print that power prefers to keep off camera. Tonight, in roughly 9 minutes, we will examine how a self-appointed committee of 100 wealthy intellectuals sold the world a computer model, a crisis narrative, and ultimately the intellectual scaffolding for what we now live under, the age of sustainable limits, administered by people who never seem to observe those limits themselves. The Club of Rome was never a mass movement. It was a salon. Founded in 1968 at the Accademia dei Lincei in Rome by Italian industrialist Aurelio Peccei and Scottish chemist Alexander King, its original membership read like a Forbes list with royal seasoning. David Rockefeller, multiple members of the Agnelli and Thurn-on-Taxis families, the inevitable Rothschild representative, and a rotating cast of UNESCO bureaucrats, World Bank economists, and at least one future Prime Minister of Canada. Their first and most enduring product was the 1972 report, The Limits to Growth, a 200-page exercise in systems dynamics performed on the primitive computers of the day at MIT. The model was elegant in its brutality. Feed in population, industrialization, food production, resource depletion, and pollution. Run the simulation forward and watch every plausible scenario collapse by the middle of the 21st century. Conclusion: exponential growth on a finite planet must end, either by intelligent design or by disaster. The book sold 12 million copies in 37 languages and became scripture for an entire generation of policymakers. The fact that every single one of its major predictions, resource collapse by 2000, mass famine by the 1980s, industrial implosion by 2010, turned out to have to be spectacularly wrong, has done remarkably little to dent its prestige. One might forgive a bad forecast if it were offered in good faith. The cynicism creeps in when you notice who funded the computers, who sat on the club's executive committee, and who stood to gain from the prescribed medicine. The same industrial dynasties that had spent a century extracting the planet's resources suddenly discovered that the real problem was too many people using those resources. The solution, naturally, was not to relinquish control of the resources, but to place them under international management, preferably by bodies in which Club of Rome members already held influential positions. Music drops to a colder register. Consider the timeline. 1972, limits to growth. 1973, OPEC embargo, engineered oil shock. 1974, Henry Kissinger's National Security Study Memorandum 200 argues that population growth in the Third World threatens U.S. access to strategic minerals. 1987, club member Gro Harlem Brundtland, Club of Rome member, chairs the commission that coins sustainable development. 1992, the same phrase becomes the operating system of the Rio Earth Summit. Today, every net zero target, every carbon credit scheme, every Great Reset white paper traces its intellectual ancestry straight back to that 1972 MIT printout. The club never needed to govern directly. It seeded the governing class. Maurice Strong, club member, architect of the UN environmental bureaucracy. Gro Harlem Brundtland, club member, WHO Director General during the COVID response. Canadian oil billionaire Maurice Strong, again club member, Secretary General of the 1992 Rio Summit. The revolving door does not spin. It is a perfectly engineered turbine, and the predictions kept missing. In 1972, they warned we would run out of gold by 1981, mercury by 1985, tin by 1987, zinc by 1990, petroleum by 1992, copper, lead, and natural gas by 1993. Instead, real prices of almost every commodity fell for 4 decades. Reserves grew because markets and human ingenuity did what central planning never can. Yet the policy response was always the same: more central planning. The Club of Rome's true genius was rhetorical, not scientific. They replaced the language of plenty with the language of guilt. Growth became unsustainable. Consumption became overconsumption. A child born in the developing world became a carbon legacy. the moral burden was shifted from those who control capital to those who merely wish to acquire it. And the proposed thermostat for this new age of limits? A technocratic elite that meets in five-star venues to lament the tragedy of the commons while flying private. Visual: montage of Club of Rome conferences in Salzburg castles, Bellagio villas, and Davos-adjacent resorts. Today, the club is quieter, having largely succeeded. Its fingerprints are on every ESG mandate, every 2050 net zero pledge, every World Bank loan conditionality that requires population control programs in exchange for debt relief. The predictions failed, but the prescriptions stuck because they were never really about accuracy. They were about legitimacy. The legitimacy to manage a planet whose owners had decided there was simply too much freedom in it. So the next time a politician, a central banker, or a Davos panel solemnly informs you that we must learn to do more with less, remember where that sentence was stress-tested, refined, and first sold to the public. It was not born in a laboratory. It was born in a villa, over excellent wine, among people who never planned to do with less themselves. If this quiet autopsy of manufactured scarcity has been useful, do the necessary. Like, subscribe to the Stateless Standard, share the video while the algorithm still permits it, and tell us in the comments which modern crisis narrative you suspect was beta tested in a similar room. Until next time, stay skeptical, stay sovereign, and never trust anyone who needs a computer model to tell you the Earth is full while booking another private jet.